What is everybody? Welcome back to another FTN NBA live stream. We're here breaking down today's Friday night slate, joined by my guy Adam. Adam, how you doing today?
Good, man. Yesterday I don't know if I ate something or what, but started to feel sick to my stomach around like 1 and was not doing anything after that. But feeling better. And now the last couple of days been trying to balance basketball and all the rookie NFL stuff. So it's pretty exciting times, and I'm just going to try to ignore the fact that Cleveland's going to lose by 30 tonight.
Hey, that might be the case, but
They're going to get smoked.
I took over the free bet of the day today and went with Darius Garland, your boy.
Yeah.
And I saw that you replied to that, and it seems like you're a fan. So yeah, I guess we're on the same page in that respect at least. But that is gonna be the first game that we talk about today. Cleveland and Philly. So let's head over there and talk about those guys. How are you feeling about that game? Obviously, you mentioned that you're afraid of the blowout, but we saw some guys, have productive games last time out for Cleveland in a blowout anyway. So any interest in going back to any Cleveland guys, or how are you breaking down Philly?
Yeah, so it is promising that Garland is completely off the injury report. He's been dealing with this back for well over a month now. It's been on and off over the course of the season. So him being off the injury report is promising, and obviously LeVert, Rondo, no Rubio there anymore, and Sexton's still out. So like the usage rate and everything, like that bet of 20.5 points, like I love the over on that. So in all honesty, like Garland's the only player on Cleveland I have moderate interest in, and it is moderate interest. And like we saw, he scored 33 points last game. He's going to take 18 to 20 shots. The assists have come down lately, but it's also been because Cleveland's been so shorthanded. They've been struggling that he's been, in the games he's played, been just asked to score even more. And he's talked about it. He's kind of pissed off right now. So Garland would be the only player from Cleveland. And then for Philly, it's kind of tough to get to Harden and Embiid. They're great plays, obviously, but like you have Jokic and Giannis on the slate in better matchups and better overall game environments. You have Towns, who's cheaper by a lot than Embiid, who I think sets up just as well, if not better. James Harden's assist rate since he's joined Philadelphia has been stupid. So like there's still serious upside, obviously, with both players, but it's tough to get there. I don't think we got the Tobias Harris news yet. He didn't participate in shoot around. He's game time decision last time I saw. If he sits, maybe you can get to Korkmaz as a value, but I don't even think you need to go there. They can still play Korkmaz, Matisse Thybulle, Millsap now who's there, Niang. So probably wouldn't even go to the Philadelphia value if Tobias gets ruled out.
Yeah, I mean, from what we've seen from Tobias since they went out and acquired Harden, has not been pretty. So I don't even know if him being out would, open up a ton of usage. Like we've seen several games with what's been 3 games now with Harden,
Yeah.
4 games, I think 3, but in 2 of those 3 games, he's had sub 15% usage rates.
Yeah, I think his usage rate in the 3 games is like 16, 17% max. It's bad.
Yeah, it's been brutal. So like when I'm trying to project that, like I have him at, 18 because on the year he's at like 22, 23%. And it's hard to believe that it's going to drop that much, but it's tough to even feel confident in that. So that does seem a bit strange. It seems like Maxi's a little bit less impacted by that change due to him, being able to do other things. And his usage wasn't really all that high before anyway. But I tend to agree. I don't really have a lot of interest in really this game, but specifically Philly. Like it's always fine to play Embiid and Harden. Like they have massive upside any night, and Harden has he's at like 1.6 fantasy point per minute even after the trade, and obviously playing alongside Embiid, so that's good to see. But I think I prefer other spend ups, so probably go elsewhere. But those guys are they're fine on any night. Like they're going to be kind of the same deal where they have the massive ceiling that they're going to bring each and every night. But my thing is, I think I probably just prefer some other guys, and especially for Embiid, you have a few other centers that I think are either better point per dollar plays that, they probably don't have similar ceilings like, guys like Siakam or other centers in that cheaper range. But then you have Jokic and Giannis who are center eligible. And, in terms of FanDuel, the prices aren't all that different compared to Embiid and Jokic. So that's kind of a situation where I probably just lean Jokic despite another spot where it could be a potential blowout. But anything on the Cleveland side that you wanted to point out?
Yeah, like I said, it's just Garland. Like Mobley is offensively too inconsistent right now, and 7,300 is pretty much the highest his price has been in a while. So against Philadelphia, I don't see that as a spot to necessarily attack. Jared Allen obviously is in a bad spot, priced fairly on a slate where I'd rather play other centers. And then you have Markin and you have Love, you have Chetty playing minutes. So it's really just Garland or bust for me from Cleveland.
Yep, I'm the same way. The one thing I do like about Garland is not expecting him to get a ton of ownership. And I
No.
think it's actually kind of strange that we're not, because earlier on in the year when we would see, Sexton out, because, he's been out for such a long time, but we saw Garland work his way up to the mid nines at some points on DraftKings. And anytime he was below that, like, felt like he was pretty chalky. And I don't think that'll be the case tonight. I have met, either 10% or less on both sides. So
Yeah.
I think
And on
that's pretty
DraftKings,
appealing.
he's the same exact price as D'Angelo Russell, too,
Yeah.
who obviously I think will get more attention with Anthony Edwards out. So.
Yep, tend to agree with you there. Let's talk about Indy and Detroit next up. Cade Cunningham was added to the injury report earlier today as a questionable tag, and then it sounds like he's on track to play. So that might have just been a false alarm there. But in terms of some other guys that have been out, it's kind of the same situation for the Pacers guys. Brogdon is back, and he played, 41, 42 minutes last game. It was an overtime game, but that tells me that they're probably not all that concerned about his minutes, especially if the game's going to be close. In terms of the Pistons, Marvin Bagley is going to be back after missing the last 3 games. He was getting some solid run prior to the injury, and then sounds like Frank Jackson also has a chance to return, but I don't know how much of an impact that would be. But what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, with Cade Cunningham being active or expected to play, it really takes me off most of Detroit, especially with Bagley being back. Like, Isaiah Stewart had been playing like 30 to 32 minutes, or right around 30 minutes, I should say, the last 4 or 5 games. But I don't really think I need to go there now on this slate. It's a good matchup against the Pacers, so somebody on Detroit could do well. Jeremy Grant's pretty cheap at 6,300. If I were to play anybody from Detroit, it'd probably just be Cade Cunningham in tournaments, because we've seen him have, like he was in the Opto last night, if I'm not mistaken, at least on DraftKings, I believe. So like we've seen him have that ceiling. But nobody on Detroit really stands out as like, priority must-have plays.
Yep, I tend to agree there as well. For Detroit, for me, like, it could have been a lot different if these guys were going to remain out, but the one guy that's sticking out to me is Isaiah Stewart on DraftKings at 4,800. I like that price quite a bit over there. The only issue is, how much am I going to prioritize spending down at that position, which I don't know if I'm overly sold on doing that. And now with Bagley back, I think he does take a slight hit. I still think he'll still get some minutes. I think Kelly Olynyk actually takes more of a hit than
Yeah.
Stewart there, but again, probably not a priority play. But on the Pacers side, obviously, we've seen a lot of production from these 2 guards at times, Halliburton and Brogdon. I mean, even Hield when Brogdon was out, but Hield's off the board for me now with Brogdon back. But Brogdon 7,200 on FanDuel, 7,600 on DraftKings. Any interest there? And then I guess touch on Halliburton and whatever other Pacers that you might have interest in.
Yeah, I do have interest in Malcolm Brogdon. Yeah, I understand that Buddy Hield's playing massive minutes and taking usage, and Halliburton's there handling the ball a lot and taking usage. But in the relatively limited sample we've seen with Brogdon on the floor with Halliburton, he still has a 20% assist rate, 17% rebounding rate, and a nearly 22% usage rate. So, like, we've seen him clearly, like Malcolm Brogdon kind of reminded everybody last game that he's still very good, especially in fantasy when he gets the minutes. And, the Pacers aren't playing for anything, but it was encouraging to see him still get those minutes. And Detroit, he was in first look when I wrote about it today. So Detroit allows the most points per possession to opposing ball handlers out of the pick and roll this season. So Brogdon at 7.6 or Halliburton at 8.7, I'll take Brogdon every time, despite how much I do like Halliburton. And then the only other player, I think if you're running a bunch of lineups and tournaments, Jalen Smith's a player that I would have some exposure to. I understand Goga's active and will play, but he's barely been playing anyway. Isaiah Jackson's been starting, but he, like we've seen his entire career already, just fouling at an alarming rate. So, like, he's not even a guaranteed, 17 to 20 minutes. He could play 15. Like, he could foul out in 18, 16, 17 minutes. So if that happens and Goga still only plays 8 to 10 minutes, you could still get close to 30 minutes from Jalen Smith, who's been, like, really efficient all year, but especially since joining the Pacers. I think he's at, like, 1.1, 1.2 fantasy points per minute since joining this team. So in tournaments, he would be probably my second favorite player from this team. I think Buddy's too expensive. And Halliburton's fine, but I prefer Brogdon, who's cheaper on both sides.
Yep, I pretty much agree with you 100% there. He'll drop the board for me. I agree. Definitely prefer
He's
Brogdon over
definitely off the
Halliburton.
board for me after I had a lunch bet with Zach. The first meeting between what was it? I think it was the Magic. Yeah, it was the first Magic game on the 28th. Like it was him and Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards only had like 32, but Buddy Hield didn't get there for me. So, but all jokes aside, like 7-4 just a little too expensive.
Yep, too expensive for me. I mean, he's going to play a ton of minutes, but I just don't think the upside's there at the price anymore with these guys back. But I agree. I do like Brogdon much more than Halliburton, especially considering how much cheaper he is. But I still think Halliburton's a strong play. I think, if you're building several lineups, I think that there is appeal to probably not playing both these guys together. But if you don't have Brogdon, say you're running 5 lineups or something, you want to do Brogdon and either 3 or 4, right? Like in that one lineup that you don't have them, or one of those 2 lineups you don't have them. I do think Halliburton's pretty interesting. So that would be my approach to it. And again, like I don't think Halliburton's going to have any ownership, and we've seen it. Even last game where we saw a full Malcolm Brogdon, Halliburton still played pretty well.
His floor is so high. He scored
Yeah,
43 fantasy points in every game except for the first game against Cleveland since joining the team, and he scored 41 in that game. So his floor is
yeah,
is pretty massive.
and he had some help from the overtime game last time out. But I mean, the minutes are going to be so high. He's filling up the stat sheet everywhere. His assist rate has been massive. It's probably going to take a slight hit with Brogdon back, but I mean, still, I think it's still going to be pretty strong, even in games where we've seen Brogdon playing. 2 of those 3 games, he has 9+ assists in those. So, yeah, Halliburton and Brogdon, I think, are very, very strong plays. I agree with you. Brogdon would be the preferred guy for me, but Halliburton, I still like him a lot, especially if you're not playing Brogdon. I definitely consider that if you don't have a lineup with Brogdon, but I like your Smith call. He's still pretty cheap over on Yahoo. So if you're playing over there, I like him more so there. I think the minutes are going to be fine. Like I think you mentioned it, Goga, I don't really think he's much of an impact anymore. And even though Jackson's probably going to start, they are not giving him a ton of minutes anyway. So Smith will probably come off the bench, but probably get more minutes than Jackson. So that is where I'm at as well. He'd probably be a Yahoo only play for me, but if you got to it on DraftKings, he's still projecting as 5x, just not a massively value play over on DraftKings. But
Oh, Goga just got ruled out. It was an update.
okay, I
HB
mean,
Cards put it in. Again, it doesn't do
yeah,
a ton, but it could be an extra 4 minutes or something from
yeah,
Jalen Smith, which, considering how efficient he's been, I talked about, like, it's not nothing.
yeah. I mean, I think I had Goga for 5 minutes before, and I mean,
Nice.
let's say Smith got all 5 of those, that'd be great. It's probably not how it shakes out. I'm
Yeah.
sure they'll go maybe 2 to Smith, 2 to Jackson, and 1 to I don't know, maybe
But
Brissett
now
or
there
Tatum
is
or
a
something.
path to 30 plus minutes because, like,
Yeah,
if Isaiah Jackson, and again, you don't
right.
project foul trouble, but he's just fouling, like, I'm assuming his fouls per 36 is like 7 or something.
Yeah, very high.
If that does happen again and you don't have Goga, like, all of a sudden you're left with Terry Taylor, who hasn't been playing nearly as many minutes with everybody healthy, and O'Shea's playing huge minutes, and then it would just really be whatever minutes Jackson plays without fouling, Jalen Smith and Brissett in the front court, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think last game was probably the perfect, example of what can happen
Right.
for him. He played 37 minutes in an overtime game, so that would be like picture perfect. Like if everything went as good as it possibly can, that's probably what the game would look like. If you take the overtime away, it's probably around 30, 32 minutes on a great day. But even at the 25, 26 minute rate, still can get the job done. He's a very good permanent producer, but Atlanta and Washington's the next game on the board. Sounds like John Collins is going to return for this one. He's available and ready to go after missing. I don't even know how many games actually. I thought I had a note on the
I
sheet,
think he
but I
was out
don't. Uh,
6.
seven games.
February
So
11th was the last time he played,
yeah,
but we also had the All-Star break. So I think it's
yeah,
been
it's been
6 or
7
7
games.
total
Yeah,
games.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, 7 games missed in a row for Collins. So I'm assuming a minutes limit will be underway here, but we'll have to obviously hope for a note of that. I haven't seen an official note, but again, when you miss a good amount of time, especially I think it was a foot injury, I
Yeah.
tend to lean towards there will be some sort of limit. But
So
we've seen crazier things.
how many minutes did you have projected for Capella this morning and now? Because We had gotten to the point where he was playing, remember, like 25 minutes a game, and it was
Yeah.
like, you can't play Clint Capella right now. And then Collins has been out, and he's been playing 30 to 32. Collins is back, but he could be limited. Plus, Okongwu's out with a concussion. So, like,
Yep.
do we just see Gorgie Jang play backup center, or do they play Collins backup center? Like, because Capella was in first look, and I love the spot for him, but I also wonder if Collins isn't limited if we go back to seeing Clint Capella play 26 minutes. But Capella playing 26 minutes during that stretch or whatever wasn't due to Collins. It was due to Okongwu playing really well for them.
Yeah, I think this morning I want to say Capella at 30 or 31, I think.
Yeah.
And then I had Jang at like 17 or 18, and that was with John Collins out, obviously, and Okongwu out, and then Collins in. I have Collins for 26 now, Capella for 27, and Jang for 13. So I think it's a little bit of a spot where Capella probably still takes a small hit with Collins back, but I mean Collins probably isn't limited. I don't think in any more than like 26 minutes. I'd be very surprised if they're playing him and only going to play him like 20 minutes. Like we've seen Markelle Fultz return from being out for a year and go out there and play
Yeah.
16 to
And
20 minutes.
Atlanta's
Limit, so
still on the outside looking in the playoffs. So, like, they need to
yeah.
win.
Yeah, so that's where I have those guys, minutes as of now. And with that being the case, probably don't love any of them. I think if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be Capella. I did like Jang a lot this morning. After looking at projections at just 3K on DraftKings, he's still projecting for 5x value in just 13 minutes, but that's just because he's min price. So you're looking for much more from him there. But with Collins back, probably not in much of consideration now, but probably just Capella of those three for me. I still think, though, that you have Bogdanovich who's in play. He's 6K on DraftKings. That price is fairly high, but the minutes have been good. And I think that I think he might lose a minute or two from Collins being out, or being back in. But I don't know if he completely gets, wiped away in terms of minutes. Like, I think Gallinari probably takes the biggest hit of these wings that we've seen playing some big minutes. And I think Bogdanovich, Herter, and Hunter probably take small hits there, with Collins playing a lot of the four. But again, no priorities for me for this team. I guess the closest to that would be Trae Young on FanDuel, just because he's only 9-1 over there. But after that, nobody that I'm prioritizing from Atlanta.
Yeah, like, I still have some interest in Capella just because the matchup is so interesting for him. The Wizards are allowing the 6th most rebounds per game to centers. They also allow the 2nd most points per possession and the 3rd worst field goal percentage to the roll men out of the pick and roll. But if there's less, if more of those pick and roll opportunities go to Collins, who's been, developing a nice rapport with Trae Young in that role, then that hurts Capella. Plus, the rebounding rate's higher for Capella with Collins off the floor. Plus, it could just lead to 26, 27 minutes from Capella instead of 30, and he's priced up over 6K now on a slate where there are mid-range and value centers. So Capella was somebody I had a lot of interest in this morning. It's definitely come down a bit, but if you're running a bunch of lineups, I still think Capella is interesting given the matchup. And yeah, Trae Young's obviously the probably the best play from this entire game. The Washington side is just like, it's been the same thing. It's been Kuzma 9K doing everything, and then nobody else is even remotely expensive, and they all kind of are underwhelming. So Washington's pretty gross.
Yeah. The thing about Washington is like there's a lot of cheap guys that I think are somewhat in play.
Yeah, like everybody's 4K.
Yeah. So it definitely comes down to, especially if you're doing, if you're using the optimizer, it comes down to building these rules out and, telling the optimizer that you probably don't want any more than like one of the guys I'm thinking of are like KCP, Kispert, Ish Smith, and then Rui. Like those are the guys that I think have some upside at the price, but I think there's also a lot of really good value throughout the slate that you can kind of get away
Right, like
from.
we have Malachi Flynn, we
guys,
have Payne, we have Beasley. So like Ish Smith,
yeah.
We've seen him have upside, and he'll close if he closes a game, he can go for like 35 fantasy points. But it's just tough to get there when he and Neto are essentially splitting the point guard minutes. If I had to choose one player from Washington outside of Kuzma, it would be Kispert, just because I think the minutes are solidified for him. But like, it's not exciting.
I mean, the minutes are solidified for him and KCP, no doubt about it. Kispert's played 30 plus minutes in the last 7 games, and he's shown times where he can score 20 points. I think he has 2 games of 20 plus points in his last 9, which if he does that, that's definitely going to be enough. But he doesn't do anything else. Like he doesn't really rack up. Like he has a 7% assist rate and a 14% rebound rate. So that's going to be tough to rely on, like in terms of good fantasy production when if he doesn't have a good night shooting. So that's always the downside of Kispert. But the minutes will for sure be there. Like there's no doubt that he's going to play close to or over 30 minutes. Same for KCP, who I would prefer KCP over Kispert. They're all basically the same price on FanDuel. KCP's 400 more on DraftKings, but I would much rather play KCP. So far this season with no Beal, no Dinwiddie, no Harrell on the floor, his permanent production is up and his usage is up. So I don't mind KCP. I think the most interesting guys from DraftKings from like a ceiling based on their price perspective would be Ish or Rui, just because they're so cheap to where, and these guys can be good permanent producers, right? Like Ish is right around 0.9, same for Rui. So those would probably be the guys that I would have some interest in, but not like you can't really compare them to some of the other value guys. So that's my issue with them. And again, probably setting rules in the optimizer to, prevent you from having any more than one. But anything else in this game?
No, we did get a question in Discord, though. 2v2, which do you like better? Gary Trent and Isaiah Roby or Poku and Capella? I would lean first side now. It was closer before Collins was in, but with Van Vliet out again and everybody out for the Thunder again, I would lean the Trent Roby side.
Yeah, I think I would also lean the first one. I think the Poku and Roby one could be close, but I like Trent a ton tonight, so I'll go with the first one. But all right, let's move on to the next game, though. Milwaukee and Chicago. I think this could potentially be one of the best, I guess, real life basketball games on the board. But interesting enough, this game has the highest total as well, which I wasn't really expecting. I mean, both these teams are obviously very good, but they also are very good defensively, and the Bucks play pretty fast. They're 10th in pace, but the Bulls play pretty slow. I believe they're 18th or 19th. And then to see the 240 total was, I guess, not extremely surprising, but it wasn't like I expected that. So I think that's a pleasant surprise from a DFS perspective. So what are your thoughts on this game here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the highest total of the slate still, I believe. I think the
Yep.
Houston game is right behind it. But yeah, Giannis should be pretty easy to get to on this slate. I love Giannis. I like Bobby Portis as well. If you get to Middleton and Drew Holiday, like they aren't really ever bad plays. It's just they also aren't priorities ever when Giannis is healthy. Drew's been good the last couple games, but and obviously the matchup's better for point guards with the injuries that Chicago still has in their backcourt. But it's mostly Giannis and Portis for me. I think the other side's interesting too because Milwaukee plays pretty fast. Like Vucevic and especially DeRozan are still kind of priced up, but we've seen Zach LaVine's price come down now. He's only 8K on DraftKings. I like LaVine a lot in tournaments. Like on paper, the matchup, you look at our advanced DVP tool, you look at a lot of other metrics and tools for this matchup, it doesn't really jump out at you. But at 8K, LaVine's going to play 35 minutes in a close game, take plenty of shots. And if there's one player on this team that can take advantage of this matchup, it is LaVine because he does shoot threes. Milwaukee, just under 39% of the points allowed by the Bucks have come from three. It's the highest rate in the NBA. We know DeRozan doesn't really shoot threes. Vucevic will occasionally pick and pop, but like I think it's a spot where if Chicago wins this game, I think it's going to be more of a LaVine game than a DeRozan game. So I like LaVine a lot. He's actually one of my favorite tournament plays this slate because even at the price drop, I don't think people will get to him very much because, LaVine, DeRozan, and Vucevic are all healthy.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. I mean, up at the top of these three, I think they all have a ceiling at any night. I guess my least favorite would be Vooch, probably just because of the position that he's in,
I agree.
playing center. But I think the price on LaVine continues to be too cheap over on FanDuel. But now on DraftKings, it's getting over there as well. I mean, when you look at
What's he on FanDuel?
7,700.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you look at him compared to DeRozan, like it's very clear that DeRozan's been the better player. I mean, DeRozan did have a stretch where, there was no LaVine and he was just going off. I think that was when he went on that streak of like 35 or 30 plus points, whatever the number was. It was at least 30, but maybe even 35 plus
35 points at least in 7 straight. I think it was the first
Yeah.
person since Wilt to do that.
Yeah. So like when he went on that streak, like there was no LaVine there, but a lot of like obviously the recent projection stuff, like when you're looking at recent data that a lot of projections are made off of, like obviously DeRozan's going to, beat out LaVine in that category massively, right? But LaVine still has a ceiling. It just has to be his night, right? And I think this could be it. And I mean, it could be that could be the case any night for LaVine, right? So the price on LaVine makes him closer to DeMar with the difference in price there. I definitely prefer DeMar straight up though. On the Milwaukee side though, I'm interested in your thoughts on some of these non-Giannis players because on DraftKings, Holiday and Portis are both projecting really well. Obviously, Holiday had that nice game the other night when he hit that game-winning shot there at the end of the game against Miami, and he had 25 points, 11 assists. Like those are the top end Drew Holiday nights, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that come here and then a game with a high total. So I like Holiday quite a bit, and I like Portis, but Giannis is also probably my favorite spend up of the night. I mean, you have Jokic in such a good matchup and all that stuff, but you also have to worry a little bit about a potential blowout, right? A 14-point game, or a 14-point
Thought
spread.
about that the other night too, and
Exactly. Yeah,
Oklahoma
against
City
Thunder.
beat him by what, 12, 13?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Like I was just getting towards that as well. Like the Vegas line's telling us this, right? And people are expecting that now with such a high spread, but not the case here for Giannis. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Giannis versus Jokic, and if you are leaning Jokic, or if you're maybe doing several lineups and you have Jokic in those and no Giannis, how are you treating guys like Drew, Middleton, or Portis? Any interest there? What are your thoughts?
So Giannis versus Jokic is like insanely close for me. I'd be interested to hear what you have in terms of the difference in projection for fantasy points. I think I'm leaning Jokic, but it's not by a lot at all. It's insanely close. I want to get to both, maybe not in the same lineup, but like in general, like overall in the slate, obviously, like I want both. But yeah, I love Giannis here. Vucevic inside. The interior defense for Chicago is not strong. And I like Portis too. He's still fairly priced across the industry. Revenge game. He's been just really, really strong all year. So I like Portis. Like I had interest in Capella. Like maybe the direct pivot is to go to Bobby Portis for a couple $100 more. And again, like I don't think Middleton or Holiday are ever bad plays when Giannis is active, but just I think I'd rather play Garland than Drew Holiday, but it's not by a lot.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's very close. I might slightly lean Holiday if I don't have
Yeah.
Giannis in the lineup, but if I have Giannis, I would for sure
DFS
prefer.
Dan in chat asks Giannis Mobamba or Jokic Chuma Okeke.
I would have to.
Wendell Carter Jr.'s in, so
Yeah,
but Bamba's been playing better lately.
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think that one's simple. It's just who I think the second side, like I think it's just whoever you prefer between Giannis and Jokic, and that's your answer. I think it's kind of that simple.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's in that case, I'd probably slightly prefer um, the Giannis side, but again, it's not cut and dry. I think Jokic and Giannis are a lot closer than maybe people think. But
Oh, Carter's
um,
out.
yeah, I thought Carter was out as well.
I read it wrong. Sorry about that. Yeah,
No,
Wendell Carter Jr.
you're
is
good.
out. So, huh. I must have
So
read. Oh, I think I read Thaddeus Young was in and Wendell Carter was out. And I think I mixed out and in. So,
good.
apologies. But
Yeah.
Wendell Carter Jr. is in. So I'm glad we got to that before this game.
So I would prefer the first side for sure.
Yeah. So I agree. But it's both sides are strong now. Because my mistake was thinking Carter was in. So now that he's out, yeah, I mean both are really strong.
Yeah, and Chuma is going to start, so that obviously helps him as well. But I think it helps Bamba probably a bit more. Just a guy who I think gets elevated more. But that's actually going to be the next game, so I guess it's a clean transition anyway. I guess just to recap the Milwaukee side for me, I think if you don't have Giannis in your builds, I have a good amount of interest in both Portis and Holiday as guys to kind of fill in there. I mean, this is a high total, right? Like I definitely want some interest in this game. So if it's not Giannis, I think Holiday and Portis are very intriguing options. But let's head over to that game now. Toronto and Orlando. Obviously, for the Toronto side, no Van Vliet, no OG Anunoby. It sounds like Van Vliet's now without a timetable to return, so that's not good for him. But it sounds like he's still traveling with the team, so I guess we'll see how he plays out. But for tonight, he's going to be out. Markelle Fultz played the last two games, played 14 minutes last game, 15 minutes in the game prior, and was he looked pretty good in those games, but he's going to be back on the bench here resting for this one. And obviously Wendell Carter Jr. Out with an illness. So how are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, so with Wendell Carter Jr. out, Bamba, who had been in that like 4,500 to 4,700 range for a while and was underwhelming, has been strong in back-to-back games, back-to-back double-doubles. And a huge reason behind his struggles, like he went down to playing like we talked about with Capella playing like 25 to 27 minutes. That's kind of where Mo Bamba was at for a while, but he's been 30 and 34 the last two. Now no Carter Jr., so he should project for at least 30 again. And Toronto's quietly like not strong and at center. Like we know they play small a lot. Like Ken Birch will play his decent amount of minutes, but then it's like Thaddeus Young at the 5 and Ochua at the 5 and some Siakam maybe at the 5. So like the matchup isn't that bad for Bamba as it looks on paper. So I think he can easily double again here. I believe his rebounding rate is around 23 or 22%. 32% with Carter Jr. off the floor. And he's around 1.2 fantasy points per minute in the split. So I think you have to like Bamba a lot. And I still don't love the backcourt. Even with Fultz out, like Anthony and Suggs just don't project as like really great plays. But yeah, I mean, like I think we got a question in chat. Would you play Okiki or Bamba? And it's like I would prefer Bamba. I think there's a higher ceiling, but both are obviously set up really well now.
Yeah, pretty easily Bamba for me.
Bamba being only center hurts for sure.
Yeah.
But like because like you have Giannis as center eligible, you have Jokic, you have Towns, you have Embiid. Like center's loaded obviously per usual. So Bamba being center only definitely hurts, but like if you're playing two centers, like Bamba projects obviously as one of the better, he's not a massive value, but he's like a mid-range value at 5'2".
Yep. Straight up, I definitely prefer Bamba more. And if you're not playing Jokic, then it makes a lot of sense to consider Bamba. There are still some other top end centers, like in terms of spend ups that you can look towards, but yeah, Bamba straight up would definitely be my preferred option. So, for example, if it's a utility question between Bamba or Kiki on DraftKings, easily Bamba for me. And when you look at his splits with no Wendell Carter, all of his rates go up, his permanent usage goes up. His permanent production goes up and his usage goes up. He goes up from about 17 to about 20% usage rate and goes up to about 1.25 fantasy point per minute. So I like Bamba quite a bit. But again, it all does depend on lineup construction, but I think potentially that could lead to some lower ownership for Bamba as well. So he's definitely going to be one of my more intriguing plays of the slate. You mentioned the guards here on Orlando. On FanDuel though, Cole Anthony 5,700. Very cheap price tag for Cole Anthony, which has kind of been everyone's thorn in their side, right? We talk about how this guy hasn't been getting there a lot of times. I think a lot of it has been he's burning people when he's chalky, and that's what's really sticking with them. But I mean, when you look at a lot of his numbers compared to a guy who's 5,700, he's a very good play at 5,700. He is going to be chalky. So that's part of the problem here. And that is a problem I understand. But when you take away the name and take away, people being burned by him in the past, this is a guy who's 5,700, who's flashed 50-point upside several times already this season, has a 30% assist rate, 19% rebound rate, you straight over 26% on the year. Like those are good numbers for a guy that's 5,700. On DraftKings, I get it, probably not a priority play, but on FanDuel, 5,700, definitely going to be up there for me.
Yeah, and HP Cards brings up a good question asking if RJ Hampton will pick up minutes with Fultz out and Okiki starting. I think Hampton could get to like mid-20s minutes. Now, you obviously have Malachi Flynn on the other side of this game. You have Malik Beasley. You have some other values at guard. But like if you're looking for like Malik Beasley, we'll talk about it. He is far from safe, even at 3,200. Like he's far from safe. So if you want to pivot to RJ Hampton, I think it's viable now. He should play 20+ minutes at 3,300.
Yeah, HP Cards asked, who are you talking about? Sorry,
RJ Hampton picking up more minutes with not only Chuma Kiki starting, but Fultz obviously out. Fultz have been playing like 17, 20 minutes. Well, not yet, but 15, 16.
Yeah, that was he was designated that limit there, and I think he hit 15 or 14 and a half or so in both games. So that seemed very deliberate what they were doing there. But Hampton I don't have for a ton of minutes. But there are definitely scenarios where he goes out there and plays into more minutes. He's done that a couple times this season, so I don't hate that thought. But Ayton Beasley or Payne Trey Man?
Not on stream, so we can answer and then
Okay.
answer in chat. But
Yeah, we'll do.
I would lean the Ayton side.
I would lean the same way. I think that there's just more of a floor and ceiling combo there. Although if Payne does work up from that minutes limit,
Yeah,
I
which
guess
is possible. Like they won by
yeah.
30 last game.
So
So
so for Payne, it feels really weird to think about his minutes limit because he played 20 minutes and the game went completely wrong for him. He got into
yeah,
he had 5 fouls in that game and the game blew out. So like we couldn't even see like what the top end of his minutes limit was, but also the 20 minutes could have been the top end. So it's kind of tough to assess that there, but I have him at 25 minutes. I'm assuming that's kind of where his limit is. I think he's still a very strong play. He's going to be very popular though, which that does feel a little uneasy considering we're playing a guy who's he's not a punt. He's not a min price punt. He's like
right.
5K and he's on a minutes limit potentially again, and he's going to be potentially 40-50% owned. That does feel a little bit weird to me, but we'll talk about that when we get to that game. But anything else in the Orlando side, and then what are your thoughts on Toronto?
That's probably it from Orlando. Again, just reiterating, Wendell Carter Jr. is out. For Toronto, yeah, I mean, we know Van Vliet's out, so Malachi Flynn, 3,900. I know the minutes came down a little bit last game, but well, obviously a lot because that Brooklyn game was crazy. But yeah, I mean, he still sets up as one of the best value plays of the slate. Siakam is obviously very strong at 9,100. I still like going back to Gary Trent Jr. in tournaments. I know he's been shooting poorly lately, but he took 15 threes last game, 23 shot attempts, 4 of 23. Like, we know Gary Trent can be streaky, but like, just give me the opportunities and give me the volume. And he's taking so many shots right now. He leads his team in spot up points per game at 5.0, and Orlando allows the most points and the highest, or most points per possession and the highest field goal percentage to spot up shooters. So in tournaments, I have no problem going right back to Gary Trent. I think you can go right back to Scotty Barnes. And with Thaddeus Young in, like, he's power forward and center, so you don't have to waste a center spot if you want to play him. I think he's fine as well.
Yeah. So last time we had this news come, with Van Vliet and all that stuff, we talked about how many Raptors we wanted, and I think it was David in the chat or either on the show, and he said a minimum of 2. Do you feel that same way today?
Yeah, pretty much. Now, like, I don't think you have to have 2, right? Like, I think you can just say, okay, I want some value and play Malachi Flynn and then go elsewhere. But with OG out as well, knowing how many minutes the starters play, like, it's tough to not like Siakam or Barnes or Trent. There's obviously some volatility with Trent as opposed to Barnes, who offers more peripherals. He's had 3 straight double-digit rebound games, and at least, I mean, the stocks have been crazy for Scotty Barnes. So he would probably be my second or third favorite player from this team. But again, like I said, I do still like going back to Gary Trent in tournaments.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love Trent, especially on DraftKings where he gets the bonus for the 3 point. You mentioned the volatility there. I agree with you. But we saw that at times, like even when he's struggling, they are just going to continue to give him the ball. That Brooklyn game, I know Siakam fouled out at the end, but he got off to a pretty slow start. Trent did, and they just kept on going to him. And obviously, he racked up a lot from free throws at the end of the game. But we have seen time and time again his upside from a usage perspective for Scotty Barnes, on the other hand, we've seen the upside from him to post these massive double doubles where 20 and 10 upside, and adding on some blocks and some steals and even some assists. So that's where they both have strong upside in different ways, and that's why I think that they're more than okay to play together. I do think Barnes is the safer option because like you kind of alluded to, he's going to be better throughout the board rather than just relying on scoring like Trent does. But Trent has 30 plus actual point upside any night, and especially tonight where he's going to have a significant usage bump. And then Siakam, on the other hand, FanDuel decreased his price to 8,100. It's hard for me not to play Siakam there. I think, when you're talking the difference between the two sites on FanDuel, it's very hard not to play Siakam. On DraftKings, it's probably pretty hard not to play Flynn just because of, his uniqueness and the ceiling combo that he brings as a value play, still sub 4K.
I will
But
say with Siakam, and Zach
man.
talks about this a lot with Siakam, since Kem Birch has been back and starting at the 5, Siakam has played way less minutes at the 5, and that's hurt his upside a bit because, like, you just look at his rebounds the last handful of games. They are down by a lot. And yes, he'll still play some point forward with Van Vliet out. Doesn't mean Siakam's out of play, but it does, especially on DraftKings, where like, yes, he's power forward eligible as well, which helps. But like, if I can get to Towns or whoever, like that's the route I would still take. But yeah, like that's just something to keep an eye on with Siakam, especially because Thad's there now playing minutes and they still have Achua off the bench. And if Boucher plays, 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whoever knows with him.
Yeah, that's a good point on the Birch point, but also I think that his assists have looked
Right.
better with these kinds of scenarios. And then also you consider the fact that post All-Star break, it's gone pretty much as worse as it can from Siakam from a minute standpoint because he's been in 2 games where it's been a blowout. He fouled out in that last game against Brooklyn when he was doing pretty well. He had 18, 8, and 6 when he fouled out like 6 minutes left in the game. Then he had the game against Charlotte, the first game after the All-Star break, where they got blown out by 30. He only played 27 minutes. So he's also, while that is true about the rebounding situation, he's also had a pretty unlucky stretch of games. And then he was also dealing with the illness for a while as well, which appears to be behind him now that he's not on the injury report anymore. And he's played 42 minutes in that game against Detroit last time out. So I'm not worried about Siakam at all in this scenario. I think that I think he's one of the strongest plays on FanDuel. Very tough not to play him over there. And then on DraftKings, very tough not to play Flynn. So if you're kind of approaching how I am, where you're just locking those two in, I think it is probably pretty tough not to have 2 Raptors in every lineup, or at least a lot of lineups, because you make the point about Young. I think Boucher is also an interesting value play. And then you have Barnes and Trent, who I think are smash plays as well. So I think 2 Raptors is going to be something that I'm going to be doing a lot of tonight.
Yeah, and just to close out, like if Gary Trent's shooting kind of goes back to normal, at least the median, he should smash. I know his price is up a little bit, but like 40 minutes potentially in a close game, and like Orlando, bad team, but Toronto's been, like you said, they gotten blown out the last couple games or 2 of the last 3 games. They're obviously missing 2 of their starters, so like could easily keep this game close. And even if it's like a 15-point deficit by the end of the game, we could still see 36 minutes because it's Toronto and their starters play all the minutes.
Yep. And the best thing about Barnes is, he was the one guy that kind of lost that I guess privilege where he was playing all those minutes earlier on in the year, and that kind of went away. Seems to be back now. He's back to playing monster minutes in these scenarios, so that is good to see. So yeah, I think a lot of these guys are in very good spots. Tyreek asks, do we know if Collins will be limited at all? We don't know for sure. I am projecting him to have a little bit of a minutes limit. I have him at about 26, but we don't know for sure if he's going to be limited. And Adam made a good point how Atlanta needs the win, so it could be a spot where he jumps right back into. But Sip and Sap asks, prefer Poku, Hayes, or Jalen Smith?
I would probably go with Poku just because Oklahoma City's so depleted, but like I do like Jalen Smith in tournaments a lot. So,
by the way, we just got word a couple minutes ago. Collins is going to be coming off the bench, so I think that locks in that he's going to be limited.
He's he'll probably just play like, I would say like 21 to 25.
Yeah,
and that does make me go back to liking Capella more, especially because he won't be sharing the floor with Collins. And like so they're still starting Gallo at the 4 then.
I assume so. I didn't see.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine they would.
Yeah, they are.
That would still. So,
yeah,
I go back to liking Capella a little bit now.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that what they could do is probably just play Collins as just like the backup 5. I guess that wouldn't be overly surprising. I'll probably bump up Capella a couple minutes.
Does that mean Zhang's minutes are just like
I think so.
Gone pretty much?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'd be tough for him to. I mean, I think he could still get some if they do play Collins alongside Capella, and then obviously Okongwu being out, it keeps that in play for Zhang, but definitely not a spot where you're going to play Zhang now or even consider it. But Collins is off the board for me now, and I do think Capella probably works his way up a little bit for me.
Yeah, and Gallo's not like a lock or anything, but if you were interested and now you weren't because Collins is back, you can still go to him at like 5-1 on DraftKings. Still not a must or anything, but you feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, I'm glad we got that news. Like him coming off the bench is obviously a pretty much a lock that he's going to be limited in some capacity. I would guess probably like 22 to 25. So we'll see.
I think I have him at even less than that. I want to say 21 is where I have him.
At first I was going to say 18 to 21. I thought that was a little bit too low given the fact that Atlanta needs to win, but it is a foot injury for, a power forward. So
Yep, exactly. And about the trio of value forwards, Poku, Hayes, or Smith, I would also prefer Poku. Um, Shazam asked Chuma and D'Lo or Poku and Garland. Second one for me.
And it's single entry GPP. Yeah, I mean, like D'Angelo Russell hasn't shown this like insane ceiling with or without Edwards
Yeah.
as consistent as you might think. So
Yep.
they still have Beverly there. Beverly, we'll talk about that game. They still have Beverly there. So yeah, in single entry, I agree. I like the second side.
Yep, I would agree with the second one. Let's move through these next few games here. We have 3 games left to break down. Sorry, 4 games left. Utah and New Orleans. Any interest in this game for you? This game is almost. It's actually just a write off for me. I don't have any interest in this game here.
I mean, I have moderate interest in Mitchell because he's going to be, I would guess, like 6-7% on this slate. Like McCollum had been fantastic. 9K is not egregious, but on this slate, it's hard to get to McCollum. It's hard to get to Brandon Ingram. It's hard to get to Joval. I think, honestly, this game is if you have a feeling about Mitchell or Rudy Gobert at very, 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 popularity, like, go for it. They won't be very popular, like I said. So, but other than that, like Mike Conley's somebody maybe to be interested in. He played 34 minutes last game. That game went to overtime, so he played 29 in regulation. There was a report a couple days ago that the Jazz are going to start, bumping his minutes up. So at 6K, like if he plays 32 minutes, he could be, a solid mid-range point guard. But again, on this slate, I agree. Nobody from this game stands out as priorities.
Yeah, I think the one guy that is interesting from this game is Hayes on FanDuel. You can play him at power forward. The minutes have been really, really good for him as of late, and the production's been really good too. He's played 28 plus minutes in back-to-back games now, and he's played 26 or more in 4 of his last 5. So Hayes, in the starting lineup pretty consistently now, and he's always been a good permanent guy. So now that he's getting that run, I like him a little bit. But next game here, Minnesota and OKC, probably the biggest game in terms of injury news, I guess, or recent injury news. So, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's out for the Thunder again, right? Giddey, Dort, Kenrich Williams, Ty Jerome, like everybody favors, everybody's out. So, I mean, SGA is expensive. He's 10-3 on DraftKings, but he's been doing everything since the All-Star or after the All-Star break. It's tough to get to him, but like the usage is just massive right now. So like you still have to like him. And then we get to some of the value, right? Poku's been asked about in chat a lot. Isaiah Roby, 4,600. He's been playing very strong minutes in any sort of competitive game, which again, I think this game can stay competitive given Minnesota's injuries and the Thunder are at home. So Roby at 4.6, probably the best value center on the slate again. Now, again, like giving up a center spot is tough, but overall he projects pretty well here. Like I said, I like Poku at starting now, playing more consistent minutes for the Thunder. Those are the 3 top plays for me. Don't think you have to go elsewhere, but they all stand out a lot. And then obviously on the other side of this game, I mean, Towns, one of my favorite plays of the entire slate.
Yeah, I think Towns is definitely in play. As for OKC guys, for me, I think Poku's my favorite Thunder player on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I probably slightly prefer Roby, like on a perfect world scale. But in terms of flexibility in your lineups, Poku's probably the easier guy to get in there. But with Roby being only center eligible, but same kind of deal with Bamba, where if you're not playing Jokic, I think Roby's definitely in play, but Poku for sure easier to get into lineups. So I would say Poku's probably my favorite Thunder player that I'll get into lineups regularly, and that's probably it.
Poku being small forward, power forward is nice too.
Yeah, yep, for sure. I think Man's fine on DraftKings if you wanted to play him again, but FanDuel, no thank you at 6,800. Price is way too expensive for me over there. And then Shea as well. Like, I mean, he has been phenomenal as of late. And when you look at some of his rates with these guys off the floor, especially, just Giddey and Dort off the floor, he's over 1.5 fantasy point per minute, which is like, that is James Harden level of production and 36.5 usage rate. Like he is up there. So that's going to be a scenario where I think the price is deserving, but probably not a guy that I play a ton of. And then on the Minnesota side, you were mentioning Towns. So what are your thoughts on that side?
Yeah, and real quick, we've been getting Banton questions in Opto. I'm assuming they're talking about it in chat. I'm assuming that's the projection it should be for Malachi Flynn in the Opto. I'm not 100%
So
sure
that
though.
there was a thing earlier where Barnes and Banton got flipped for a minute, but that should be fixed now. I'll reply to him in Discord,
Okay.
but he should be able to
Um,
refresh and be good.
yeah, for Minnesota though, Towns. I mean, his usage rate with Anthony Edwards off the floor jumps up by 5.5%, putting him at 33% with him off the floor. 1.48 fantasy points per minute in the split. Now he faces a Thunder team that third most points per possession and the highest field goal percentage allowed in basketball to post ups this season. Towns had 10 post ups in that last game against Golden State with Anthony Edwards out, so more of a, more of a, mission to kind of get him post ups. So yeah, I love Towns. One of the reasons like I'm not insanely high on Joel Embiid and Rudy Gobert and some of the other centers on this slate outside of Jokic is because I just love Towns. And then we have to get to the Malik Beasley situation. 3,200 on DraftKings, still coming off the bench, but should play 24 to 26 minutes. His usage rate's around 22%, I believe, with Edwards off the floor. Patrick Beverley at 5K. Like, I think I'd rather play Beverley at 5K than Russell at almost 8K. Like, Beverly's pretty solid, too. So Minnesota's obviously very interesting. Did we get Jared Vanderbilt news yet?
He's good to go.
Okay. That's what I expected. So that takes away a little bit, but like, JD McDaniels started last game. You could go back to him. It's not as exciting, but 4,200 for a starter against the Thunder. Like, this is obviously, like you said, this is the most fantasy relevant game of the slate, given the injuries and matchups and everything like that.
Yeah. For Vanderbilt, I really liked him last game and didn't really pan out in a massive way like I was hoping. But he also lost out on a lot of minutes there, and I don't know if he loses out on those minutes continuously. Like his minutes have been pretty consistent, but I did bump his minutes down a bit just to be a bit more conservative there. But I still think that he's in play. I think his ceiling at this price is still strong. The one thing I'm concerned about is the ownership. If that's going to be, higher than some of these other guys that we've talked about, I think that you could potentially get more of a reliable floor ceiling combo out of those guys. Beasley, he's going to be pretty high owned on DraftKings as well. I think he's probably the second best value play behind Flynn, and just those two guys alone gives you kind of enough to do what you want. So if you want to just play those two value guys and then get a little bit contrarian, but you mentioned Beverly. I think that's also a really strong play. And I like him a pretty good amount on FanDuel as well, but he's also projecting as a pretty popular play. But again, like I think he's a strong value option as well with no Edwards, and a lot of his rates look really strong as well. But all right, next game here.
Real quick on that game, we got a question in Discord: Poku or Pat Bev on DraftKings? It's a good question.
It would be, man, they have like almost identical projections. I guess it would be Poku slightly, even though Pat Bev has the better median projection, but I think Poku has a higher ceiling, so I would go Poku.
Yeah, when it's that close, I feel like especially on DraftKings, it's like, who do you think, if it's really that close, who do you think has a better chance of getting a double-double? And it's probably Poku.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Houston and Denver. Yeah, we've talked about the blowout risk here in this one. Outside of the blowout risk, this game has a massive total, 239, second highest on the slate, so could be a good environment. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, Jokic last game, 50.5 fantasy points. I mean, Jokic hasn't gone over 51 in 3 straight. All jokes aside, though, like he's obviously still in a great spot. Houston's defense is terrible. They play, I believe, still the fastest pace in basketball. Yeah. I think I'm with you now, though. After looking at it, I think I do prefer Giannis as a spend up, but Jokic is obviously insanely good. It's just tough the rest of Denver, right? Like Barton's under 6K in a good matchup. He hasn't shown a ceiling in a while, really, for this team. Aaron Gordon's under 6K as well. It's kind of the same situation with him, not much of a ceiling. So even in this great matchup against Houston, it's probably just Jokic for me from this team. And then for Houston, Dennis Schroeder's going to sit. Eric Gordon will be back, I believe. So, like, I mean, Kevin Porter Jr. is only 6K. Like, I think you can get to him there and feel okay about it. And maybe, like, Garrison Matthews at 3.8. Gordon's back, but Schroeder's out. So, again, he's another player, kind of like Corey Kispert, where, like, he's not going to do much in terms of peripherals. I don't know. Christian Wood's been really just strange the way he kind of produces stats lately. 7.8 is really cheap for Christian Wood, but again, on this slate at center, like I'd rather go down and play Bamba or Capella or Roby, and then at 7-8 I'd rather go up and play if I can get to Rudy Gobert or whoever. So he's just priced very awkwardly. DeAndre Ayton's cheaper, so I think Kevin Porter Jr. is probably my favorite play from Houston, but I'm not overly thrilled about it.
Yeah, I also don't have a ton of interest in the Houston side. I guess Jokic, obviously the guy that I like the most from this game here. But I do agree Porter would be my favorite Rocket as well. I think Şengün has some merit as well. Obviously, if the game blows out, then that helps him even a bit more. But we've also seen spots where he isn't guaranteed blowout run at times. I still think he's probably likely to be out there for it, but maybe not in a massive way. So he would be
I just
somewhat
don't get why he's
interesting.
not playing so
We'll,
many more
we'll never
minutes
know.
consistently.
We'll never know.
Has shown so much potential as a rookie. Your team is terrible, and yet you're over here not playing him more than 22 minutes. And again, the 22 minutes is like the ceiling if the game gets out of hand, which is just absurd.
Yep, unanswered questions for you, Adam. There, unanswered. But I think that's a guy that you play him if you're not playing Jokic. I think a spot where you're probably hoping for a blowout there. Porter Jr. is probably a guy that you have more interest in if you play Jokic. Try to correlate them in a close game type environment there. But same deal as for Şengün. Like I don't mind this stack. Şengün with Bones Highland, especially on DraftKings. Highland's 3,600. He'd be a pivot that's probably quarter of Flynn and Beasley's ownership.
Right.
So Highland's not bad there either, and that's in that kind of scenario. New York and Phoenix is our final game. For me here in this game, probably not a spot that I go to for a lot of these guys, except for 2 or 3 value-ish pieces. It is campaign. He is in play still. I think we're going to get some more news about his minutes limit. Without that, I'm still limiting him to 25. Like I mentioned, 20 minutes last game, but things went horribly wrong for him. The game was a blowout, and he got into foul trouble. So I don't think 20 was his minutes limit. I think 25 was probably about more right if you kind of look at the pattern in which the game was going. So he's the guy in the Suns that I'm looking at most on FanDuel. Mikal Bridges is 5,400. That's way too cheap over there. He's definitely in play on that site. As for New York, I'm off of this entire team except for Alec Burks, and it's more so just a FanDuel play where he's 4,600.
Yeah, I don't have interest on DraftKings at 5-3. He just hasn't been good enough, even with Rose, Kemba, whoever out of the rotation, consistently to warrant that price tag on this slate in this matchup. I know Chris Paul's out, but this is still a good defensive team. Yeah, for Phoenix, I think my favorite plays are Payne, Jay Crowder, who I wrote up on in the first look article on before last game, and he smashed. The steals have been a little absurd for him. He had 5 that games, 2, 1, 4, 3, 3. But again, like if Jay Crowder only takes 6 shots again, he's probably going to be awful. But like 9 free throws for Jay Crowder is also an outlier. But again, with the injuries they have and the players that are out, he's still viable. Like I'd rather play him over Cam Johnson. I know Johnson as a player has a higher ceiling, but I think the minutes are a little bit safer for Crowder. And then Ayton is still in play at 7K. Not a priority for me, but I could see going there just because like Phoenix has been playing well since Paul and Booker have been out, but like they're the best team in basketball, but with how shorthanded they are, this game, like I'd be surprised they won by 30 again.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. I mean, I was banking on the game to stay close last time out, but they're still a good team. I think probably not expecting similar outcome. I think Portland's just really bad. I think that's pretty much the bottom line.
Like Portland just doesn't have anybody. Like no Lillard, no. Obviously they traded players away. It's really just Simons and Josh Hart right now.
Yeah, pretty much. And then when the game gets out of hand, they can't do anything about it. Actually, last game, Simons had 11 points in his first 7 minutes of the game and finished with 11 points. And in the second half, he didn't take a single shot. So I don't know what they're doing. Like that's probably not going to look great when your team's bottom line really bad and you're the best player in your team, either probably him or Hart, aren't as involved. Like
Did you
your
see
team's
that
going to
Bulls
get blown
lineup?
out.
The Bulls are starting Dosunmu, Levine, DeRozan, Vucevic, and Tristan Thompson.
That feels strange.
Is that accurate?
I guess they're doing it to try to match up with the Bucks a bit, but I feel like that doesn't match up.
Power forward Vucevic? Do they understand Giannis is playing power forward still? Like, he is going to destroy Vucevic. I mean, if they want Tristan Thompson, like Tristan Thompson and Vucevic can't keep up with Giannis. I mean, good luck, Chicago. Like, nobody can stop Giannis anyway, but I don't understand why that's bad.
Yeah,
I understand DeRozan's been playing the 4, so I get it, but like makes me like Giannis even more, to be honest.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, that's pretty interesting. But we've hit lock for the first few games. I think there's 3 or 4 games that locked at 7. So if you have any questions leading up to other games, feel free to throw it to us in the Discord, tag experts, or tag the @expert tag. That'll let us all know. But I'll update the projections for the Chicago news. I don't think Thompson gets like massive minutes now. It's probably just a matchup thing, and if it doesn't go well, it's probably. I mean, if it goes horribly, I wouldn't even be surprised if he doesn't start in the second half. But yeah, I will update those and see how the minutes look after that. But that's gonna do it for us. Adam, any last words? Any last remarks? Oh, hold up one sec. Sorry, Jokic is questionable now with an illness. So that's great.
And that is the 9 o'clock game. So I guess you can run through like a contingency plan. Like if we get word that Jokic is out, I mean, DeMarcus Cousins is 4-4.
Yeah.
And Barton and like everything I said about Denver with Jokic just flips, and all of a sudden Denver becomes like it's like Jokic is obviously only one player, but because he does everything for this team, him being out makes everybody more interesting. And obviously, like they're obviously already without Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. But yeah, of course, right after 7 o'clock this happens. Cool.
Yeah. And Rivers also questionable with an illness, so maybe those two are hanging out together.
Do they play tomorrow?
That's a good question.
If they do, maybe Jokic sits.
They do not. Their next game is Sunday.
Okay. Well, obviously keep an eye on news and Discord and everything, and probably get that news within the next hour or so.
Yeah, hopefully. If those guys are out, I mean, I already like Bones from a certain angle, but I think guys like Gordon, Barton,
I mean,
DeMarcus Cousins, if he's starting.
It's Cousins. Cousins is going to be.
Yeah.
The problem is this game is after Orlando-Toronto starts. Like, Bamba's in that price range at center. It's after the Oklahoma City game, and Isaiah Roby's in that price range at center. So, like, that's going to be very, very tough to decipher.
I mean, I would be very surprised if he plays at this point. Like, I don't see the point.
We talk about late day adds injury report. This is like absurdly late, 7 o'clock. I know the game's not till 9, but like usually when you see a player pop up in the injury report, I know it's not an injury, it's an illness, but like the injury report, it's like 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I wonder if it's like he was feeling a little under the weather earlier, and he's like, yeah, I'm still gonna play. Now he's probably feeling maybe still not good, and it's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't play tonight.
Yeah. So obviously this is going to change a lot. So make sure you're monitoring the Discord and all that good stuff. As far as the projections, the optimizer is always going to update earlier than the table. So if you're looking for updated projections, check out the optimizer before you check out the table. That's just a little FTN life hack there for you if you're looking for updated projections as quick as possible. But make sure we're following that news. That's obviously going to change the slate a ton, and I think it's very unlikely that they play at this point. We talked about it being a 14-point spread. Maybe they're just taking the night off and they want to camouflage it as an illness or whatever that may be. But like you mentioned, 7 o'clock is when they're added. It seems a bit strange and like they are probably not going to play, but we will check and we will monitor that news. But that's going to do it for us. For Adam, I'm Kyle. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that a ton. We're trying to do as much content on the YouTube side of things as possible. So all the subscribers and the likes on the videos really do help us out a ton. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, good luck, everybody.